G'day, Navigations. Welcome back to the Jetstream. And unfortunately, not as happy as it's been since Christmas/New Year. Unfortunately, the streak is over, although we are still top, and that will be the positivity of the episode title. But yeah, we've got a couple of things to discuss about the game on the weekend against Auckland, and obviously we've got a game coming up this weekend against Sydney, and joined by someone who I haven't actually spoken to in a bit on this podcast, but he was here a couple of weeks ago with Matt when I was off. But welcome back, Andy, mate. How you going?
Mate, good to be here. I thought you were talking about the streak being broken, that Matt's had a week off. But, he's
We have
consistent and
our recording
everyone's
streaks.
entitled to it.
We don't really have a recording streak on this podcast, unfortunately, with shift work the way it is. Sometimes I am available, but Matt's got things on, and sometimes he's not available. And unfortunately we've had a bit of a broken season this season with different things going on in everyone's lives. But we get on and record where we can. But
How dare
it
we
is
all
good.
contribute to the economy?
Yes, exactly right. But it is good to have you back. And you had a bit more of a personal experience than I did. I didn't get to the game on the weekend, but you were in the house. How have you been finding the last couple of weeks with the increase in the crowds? And I did go to one of the games where it was, I think it was early on in the run, where we got about 12,000. It's pretty similar to what we got on the weekend, but it does come with its own issues. Obviously, getting into the ground is a little bit more of a prolonged process as opposed to when the crowds were a lot lower. And parking is obviously parking further afield, depending on how early you get to the ground, is also a bit of a change. How have you been finding the increase in the crowds? It's been great to get more people through the turnstiles and more people seeing the Jets, but how have you found it in the ground?
Yeah, I've been lucky enough that through different circumstances, time's allowed me to go to a few more games. I think I've been fairly consistent in the last 4 or 5 games, and shout out to Pete, Dave, and Joel, and a few of the other Jetstream sort of alumni that have welcomed me to sit with them and really get involved in that community there. So I do appreciate it. But the game and the atmosphere and all that has sort of really grown. The club's obviously putting a bit of emphasis into, the match day build up and all that side of things. I haven't really found any. I think there was one week where there was a bit of a teething issue with getting in. I think that was possibly the Wellington game, going back that far. And but outside of that, they've seemed to have worked that out. I was speaking to a mate of mine that works in production for the stadium, and he was sort of alluding to the fact that one of the big challenges is that the stadium, whilst they employ a lot of casual staff, they try to roster based off numbers sort of a week or two out. And obviously, with the Jets being the way they are, I think there's still a very casual, transient fan base there that decide really on the day whether they're up for it or not.
Yeah.
And because of that, that then generates issues where, we've had, I think it was the Wellington game where there was a decent crowd there, but the Eastern Grandstand, none of the food or beverage places were open. It was open for sitting, but there was no food or beverage in that side. So people would have to walk around to the Western Stand to get a drink, or obviously one of the bars on the hill or whatever. But since then, they've also been opening up the, you're testing me now, the southern gate as well, for you to go in, so the hockey end. And it's been pretty good. And I think people are also like, I hate to sound like, what was it, Alan Joyce from Qantas, when he said in COVID that travellers weren't match fit with their luggage and everything. But I think now you see people, they're not taking as much into the ground, or if they do, they go to sort of the one side so that they can have security check through their bags and everything, and other people just sort of walk on through. So yeah, I think you get in. I made the rookie error of, normally I park along Newcastle Road there, so I can just sort of get straight out and go. But one week I got there, it was for the Wanderers game. I got there a little bit earlier and parked actually on, whatever the street is that runs along the front.
Yeah.
And,
Turton Road.
Turton Road, that's it. Great park for when you get there at, an hour and a half before kickoff. Horrible when you realise that you're then not going to move
Yeah.
at the end of the game
Yeah.
because everyone's trying to leave and police have got streets blocked off and everything else. But luckily, that was a game where I was lucky enough to join Ben Archer down on the field, so I got to hang around and talk to a couple of the players and Tane and a few other sort of staff. So I was in no great hurry to get out. But in answer to your original question that I've now filled a couple of minutes filibustering about is that, the match day experience is definitely improving. And I actually thought the crowd was going to be a little bit bigger than it was for the Auckland game. Even sitting there, it looked like the top of the Western Grandstand was pretty full as well, or at least had a decent amount up there. But you never sort of know. And there was obviously this round we had seemed to be a lot of people from the academies there as well, a lot of the academy players. So I don't know if they're counted when they go through because they don't actually go through a turnstile. Same with all the kids that play like the mini roos or whatever it is on half time. My was it nephew was there for the Wanderers game, and they went through sort of the side gate and never went through a place that actually counts their ticket. So
Yeah.
I don't know if they get included. There was the HSPA had their marching band there, so that was about 40 kids that wouldn't have been in the count, but are obviously sitting there when you do a bit of a head count around the stadium. So yeah, I'd be interested to know how much they do take into the crowd figure that they put up. But they also announced the crowd figure at like the 92nd minute. So,
Yeah.
yeah, it was an interesting one for the Auckland game, that's for sure, but definitely a better experience.
Well, I think we're sort of still going to start to run into issues now with the NPL starting. I think that was something that popped up on social media in the post match discussion of this game, was the fact that a lot of people wanted to come to the game but found that the earlier like the 5 p.m. kickoffs are going to start or are starting to clash with the local competitions. Not, they play in the afternoon, but there's not
Yeah.
enough time between those games wrapping up for people to get home, get showered, get changed, and then make their way into the ground in plenty of time. So yeah, and that's sort of something that's probably going to have to get looked at some point. But then again, what do you do? Does
Yeah.
the local competitions not run on a match day, or do we try and make the games later and make the NPL games earlier to maximise that window between the two? It's been a problem for since the A League started, basically due to the way the calendar rolls. There's not really a great deal you can do about it, but there's possibly some tweaks that you can make that's going to make that process a little bit easier. And because these are the people that you want to be getting back into the stadium and supporting the team, like they're football supporters, they're playing football. You
Yeah.
want to give them every opportunity to be able to come into the ground and be able to help bump up those crowd numbers. And that's probably why we only saw, I'm not sniffing at 12,000 people being in the ground, no way in hell, considering where we've come from, even from the beginning of the season. But it's going to be the difference between, averaging between 12 and 14,000 for the rest of the season and going into next season if the positivity hangs around, and maybe getting 16,000 plus to 20 and growing the club that way, trying to get as many people in. Like you want to try and get the people that love football to come and watch the game. We've got hashtag box office jets for a reason. Like, people enjoy watching this team play, but now we're sort of, I think we're over that hump of people deciding that, well, do we sit back and wait for the good times the good times are here. We're here now,
Yeah.
but how do we maximize
Yeah.
that, and how do we get more people through the gates and try and capitalize on that as early as we can, especially for next season, because we're going to have a bit of turnover. There's going to be a lot of work to do on many different fronts for the club, and getting enthusiasm in the off-season build up so that we don't lose momentum between now and then is going to be one of those fronts.
Yeah, absolutely. And you've also got, the local leagues now with the whole Newcastle district breaking off and just doing their own thing this season and whatever else. So, I mean, if you're just playing all games in Newcastle, I know it's a, you know, it's a big commitment if you're, up at sort of 6, 7 o'clock in the morning to go to kids soccer and whatever on a Saturday morning, and then to turn them around and go in the afternoon. But
Yeah.
if you're only staying in Newcastle now, you've got life pretty good. You're not travelling up to Singleton, Muswellbrook, and all those kind of areas like you may have been. Um, get out and support the team. And the other thing is too, we always turn around and say like the club should be investing in players and the club should be doing this and the club should be doing that. One of the club's only revenue streams outside of, selling players that we want to hang on to is match day revenue. So it makes sense to me to get out and actually support them.
Yep, absolutely. Now, Matt and I had a fairly long discussion last week, or last podcast which was last week, about whether we thought it might be time for Millsy to tweak with the starting lineup, because we thought maybe we were sort of having a discussion around going off the boil or trying to adjust things to avoid reacting when we start going downhill. Like you want to try and tweak things when you're on either, we're starting to plateau off, so that you're being proactive rather than reactive. Do you feel that? I mean, we sort of arrived at the conclusion that maybe like the game against Auckland, might have been the time to start maybe tinkering with some things with regards to the starting lineup. He didn't. Do you think he should have maybe, in hindsight, obviously hindsight being 2020, do you think maybe we should have changed things around, or were you happy with the way we played with the lineup that we started with?
I was happy when, I wasn't shocked, and I was definitely happy when they announced that, it was going to be the same starting lineup. The thing that did interest me was that, you've obviously still got a relatively young squad, and therefore, the pressure of backing up every week and expectancy to perform and all that sort of stuff. But I guess in this game too, that final percentage wasn't sort of there. It wasn't the ease that it's been the last couple of weeks and stuff like that. So therefore, I think that allowed for opportunities of, you know, Potter coming on earlier than he perhaps normally would, and Gibson getting an opportunity and all that sort of stuff. And with the news finally coming out during this week that Lockie Rose is off to Dundee in Scotland, then
Yep.
Whilst
rumours circulating about a number of other players as well, so he's not going to be the only one.
But in the absolutes of him announced now that he is going, you're going to get one of two things, where it's either he's going to want to finish the season strong, which I'm not doubting for a second that Lockie isn't that kind of person to, whilst he's here sort of thing.
Yeah.
But at the same time too, we, really have to be starting to look at, well, we now know he's not going to be here next season. There's 8 or 9 goals wiped out straight away. Is that, is Dobson going to be pushed in and we're going to focus on him? Is Eli Adams, if he doesn't get moved on himself, which is highly likely, is he going to play that, number 9 role? Are we going to bring in someone else? Is Gibson the one that takes it on? All that sort of stuff. Now is probably the time where you do look at rotating even for a week of, do you swap them around and Lockie comes off the bench with energy for the last 25 minutes and, can chase down a tired Sydney and all that sort of stuff. So I definitely think there's merit in rotation, but I also can't say that if I was Millsy, I wouldn't want to go with a fairly successful winning formula that's been there now for weeks on end.
Well, how did you find the first? We'll go into the first half. Obviously, we don't need to go over the starting 11 because it's exactly the same as it has been.
Yeah.
We first versus second, so everything was to play for. We were 4 points ahead of Auckland before kickoff.
Yeah.
We'd beaten Auckland twice already this season, so you knew they were going to change the way they played, and they did. They were a lot more physical in the tackle. Quite a number of our players got clattered early on. I'm pretty sure I remember Eli Adams, Mark Natter, and Taylor, and I think even Lockie Rose, all getting smashed at various intervals. And I don't really want to
Yeah.
discuss the ref, but we weren't really getting much from him at any point with regards to those.
No, even Shaughnessy got dropped at one
Yep,
point, which I was like, that's brave.
yeah, yeah, absolutely.
So
So yeah, look, how did you see? And I mean, I'm reticent to criticize the team too much because they've done so well for so long,
yeah,
and you this team, especially where we've come from, has performed so well, and everyone has seen that. But did you see that there was a bit of a difference between how we were playing and how they were playing, and maybe we could have adjusted things a little?
yes and no, because we definitely were still in the game. They definitely started stronger, and not only stronger in performance, but physically stronger. They were up for let's physically sort of push them over rather than trying to beat them. Let's just beat them. Um, so
Yeah,
that was, yeah, definitely noticeable. But it was ebb and flow for pretty much the entire game, really. Like they would have a shot, we would have a shot. I'm sure we'll go into,
yeah,
stats and everything shortly, but it seemed like a very balanced game watching it, which probably means stats wise it wasn't at all, and it just never really makes sense that way.
we'll get to it.
Um,
We'll get to it.
but but yeah, I think we were definitely in it. It was just that week that things weren't clicking for us in a perfect way, and we definitely had luck on our side with quite a few of Auckland's chances, coming off posts and all that sort of stuff. It
Yeah.
could have definitely been a very different game, and we were probably lucky to come away with the result that we did. But in the same way, if it was a 2-2 draw, I think it would have also been well deserved.
Well, I mean, we've seen teams try the physicality factor to put us off our game and put us off our rhythm from Brisbane fairly early on. And I think probably the first Sydney game as well, where we got tonked.
Yep.
But we haven't really seen the guys get put off their game to the extent where I think they sort of did in this match early on. I don't. I think we sort of
Yeah.
we I think, yeah, well, you're right. I think we did
We
start a bit
adapted.
slower. We adapted to the game, but the second half, it was more. They had more of the momentum and more of the rhythm. I think, even though I've just had a quick gaze at the stats, and you'll be very surprised at what the possession and everything is all is going to be when you compare it to the other stats then compared to us versus Auckland. But look, we did adjust, I think, but again, is this going to be? I mean, I wouldn't say we're in a precarious position. We're still a point ahead. Everybody's on the same number of games now, so all we have to do is go through and win all the rest of our games, because we're in the unique position of both us and Auckland are playing exactly the same teams over the
Yeah.
next 4 games to finish out the season. So all we have to do is finish with more points than Auckland, and we've won the Premier's Plate, which we've never done before. Even being
Yeah.
in a top 2 position is a massive achievement, considering
Yeah.
where we've been since 2018.
Yeah.
How confident are you that we're going to be able to adjust to, because teams have seen how to beat us now? Like, we haven't been beaten since Boxing Day. That was the last time we lost, which was against MacArthur. Teams have tried different tactics. It hasn't worked, but now we've seen what the blueprint is from Auckland. Are the other teams going to be able to play the same way and get the same result, or do you think we're going to be able to adjust to that better than we did in this game?
I think we'll be able to adjust purely because Millsy will obviously go over everything that has happened in that game. You see, even in his press conferences, he's after the game, like immediately after the game, he's already saying, this is where we did this and we need to do this and all that sort of stuff. Because the other thing is, like, reality of the situation is we all know that Mark Milligan is not going to be a long-term coach. You know, we may get him for another
season,
year, maybe
Yeah.
two at most. And then if, he keeps doing well, like next season, we're playing in, a form of Asian league. If he gets noticed there, it's off for, big money and whatever else.
Yeah.
So, we'd be foolish to say that we're, going to keep him long term. And even as you said, the squad itself could look greatly different next year because we've put our faith in young players that are going to get attracted for, you know, hopefully we're getting transfer fees from them, but no one's going to stand their way of going because one, the club would rightfully want and need the revenue from it, and also
Yeah.
two, you're not going to hold someone back from being able to have what's already a fairly limited career. As far as, it would have been nice to have beaten Auckland and be going into this run of games with 7 points to essentially burn. But in saying that too, you now know that you can't take the foot off, and not saying that they would have, but I think now it's very much we need to maximise points in every game so that for the first time in, I think, the club's history, we're actually in charge of our own destiny for once.
Yeah, and if nothing else, it does make the run-in exciting. Every game means something, so that this is the pressure cooker of competitive football. We're going to see what these kids are made of between now and the end of the season, and
well, and also too, what is it? Last game we played Mariners at home.
Yep.
Like, what better time to raise the plate above your head, I say.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, considering that's the one thing they've been able to hold over us. Like, we've won all these other trophies, and it's like, well, here's our Premier's plate now. All we got to do is now work on the ACL side of things. But yeah, that's definitely going to be interesting. Well, look, getting back to the game, I was pretty impressed with a number of players on the Auckland side of things. Hall, Jesse Randall, who I'm pretty sure I saw is going to be heading to Dundee, I think, along with Lockie Rose.
Yep.
I'm pretty sure he's been signed by them as well.
I did see something about that. He's a very good, very good player, and he
didn't
was
cover himself with glory.
Woodwork 2 or 3 times.
Didn't cover himself in any glory with the body check for. Who was he whacked by Natter, or I think he was whacked with Natter on the eastern. On the eastern side,
yeah, and he had to roll
in the back, and then rolled around, clutching his
hour.
face. Yeah, so that's definitely got a couple of comments from Daniel McBreen. He doesn't put up with that shit. But and obviously the guy that scored the goal, which we'll talk about in a minute, he was a menace for the entire game. Couple of opportunities for both of them. I think Guillermo Mai was also another one that he. A little bit more petulant than I remember. Good player, but yes, very easily riled up. Our guys were sort of, we might be able to get out of this bloke's skin, and I think he got dragged early in the second half so that he didn't end up going over the top. But yeah, they were defending premiers as well, so they've done the business. They're an expensively assembled team, and they knew what they were doing. And Steve Corica's no mug, so the way they played, they learnt from the previous 2 games, and that's obviously going to happen. We did that when we ended up getting smashed by Sydney. We learned our lessons, and we were able to turn the result around, and hopefully we're going to be able to do the same again on the weekend. But they definitely worked out a way that was effective.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that if you were to go with the whole first, second potential grand final, like, I'm not saying that was by any means a grand final game, but you'd be pretty happy with those teams squaring up, I think, from both sides of the fence as far as a fan base or even a neutral.
So I'm just having a look at the highlights, the first highlights on the Paramount Plus 3-minute highlight package that we're going to constantly refer to as we talk about the game was, like I said, 10 minutes in, a slap shot from outside the 18-yard box that Delhi was able to get close to, but it was going high, wide, and handsome. But, they were that wasn't the first, before we scored, that wasn't the first effort at goal. And I'm pretty sure there was a couple of other attempts that, they were getting into the box with some accuracy. So when the goal did come, there were definitely warning signs there. But there were two early opportunities in the highlights before they actually ended up putting the ball in the goal.
Yeah, no, there was definitely, from memory, the one you're referring to, they put it over, and I think Delhi did get, uh, you know, edge of a fingernail to it and managed to get its trajectory going
Yeah, I'm
over.
just
And
watching it. He did get it.
um,
He did get a touch on it to push it. It didn't miss the crossbar by much.
yeah,
And then the other one was
and
a set piece about 30 yards out that
yeah,
DeVries, I
which
think, took.
was the only time where you sort of sit there and um, it's pretty common with Delianov to say, it is okay to catch the ball. But, at the same time, his job is to keep it out of the net. How he does that is completely up to him as long as he does it. So, yeah, a, a shot that, if people were napping would have probably gone in, but he was obviously onto it.
So 14 and a half minutes, Randall breaks down our right, their left, gets in front of all the defenders. I think maybe Bertolicio was involved in a tackle, and that's why that space was opened up. Shaughnessy was coming across, but obviously he's not as fast as Randall is. It looked like there was a possibility of there being an offside, but looking at the way
Oh,
the play broke down, Randall, the goal scorer, was actually behind the ball before it was crossed. So I think that keeps him in an onside position, even though they're both in front of the defenders.
yeah, I give up on trying to understand the offside rules these days. Um, But yeah, from where I was sitting in Bay 58 or whatever it is, right on that corner, it looked as though it was offside. When they played the replay on the big screen, that only made it look further offside, and then they apparently checked it and it all come back clear. Kickoff was delayed by about 10 minutes. That, depending who you talk to, was rumored to be, I confirmed it was a Paramount broadcast issue.
Yep.
There was talk that it was the VAR on the side of the field wasn't working, the actual little monitor that he goes over to confirm that the other three professional referees have made the right decision. And he indeed had made the wrong decision.
Yep.
And then the other thing was that apparently there were some camera operators that weren't actually um, there on time, and therefore they had to obviously calibrate cameras and get everything set up, and that then led to them being late. Which, if that was the cause, you'd be seriously questioning the professionalism of, because to the best of my knowledge, they're all actually like freelance contractors. They're not actual full time staff or the camera operators. So
Yeah,
yeah,
I'm pretty
interesting.
sure Paramount broadcasts all that outside broadcast stuff to. There was that was a
Is
big
it
kerfuffle. That was a big.
NEP or whatever?
Yeah, I think that was a big
Yeah,
kerfuffle last season. That was the reason why it wasn't as good. All the
yeah.
NRL and the AFL use that whoever they are,
NEP, yeah.
NEP. But we went with some weird startup company, and they ended up going bust, and we ended up having
Yeah.
to sign a contract with these other guys, which was probably what we should have done in the first place. But anyway, like I said,
Yeah.
I looked at the replay. Cosgrove was definitely behind the ball when Randall crossed it. Even though they were in front of both of them were in front of the defenders, I think that means that that's onside. But yeah,
Yeah. And
I'm
look,
assuming.
positioning or not, he still obviously managed to, pretty much kick it into one of the Jets players and then still put it in the net. So, there was whether he was in an offside position or not, there was still obviously some element of you could have intervened. But yeah, I think it's the one thing with, and look, I rate Shaughnessy quite a lot. I think he's actually, once he's been a bit more match fit, but he's still obviously a bit slower than um, some of the people he's coming up against, and he's always going to get sort of caught out in those positions. But yeah, definitely, you know, a strong player and someone I hope we keep around for a bit longer.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, we were sort of wondering whether he was going to be worth the wait, because it was a long time before he was able to make his way into the starting lineup. Like we obviously remember the couple of games where he'd come on and was gassed pretty early on. It took him a while to acclimatise to the high humidity and temperatures that you got to play football in over here as compared to the UK. But I think now is, you wouldn't break that partnership up in any way, shape, or form unless it's through injury. But
Yeah,
yeah, look, he's not going to have the recovery pace to be able to get back to try and block Jesse Randall.
yeah,
But yeah, Cosgrove managed to get the jump on both Natter and Wilmering. Wilmering was obviously faster and was literally just needed another 5 metres to be able to try and stop that ball getting into Cosgrove, but
yeah.
he just had the jump on him and was able to put the ball away, which was a bit frustrating, but it had been coming.
Yeah, and our, as you mentioned there, our back line of, Wilmering, Natta, Bertolicio, like the three of them easily make up for any shortfall in Shaughnessy's pace.
Absolutely.
So,
Yeah.
all three of them are pretty agile when they want to be.
Yeah, and there wasn't, unfortunately, not much Delhi could do about it. Anyway. So, look, and then 28th minute was a brilliant little individual effort in the end from Taylor. It's a nice little 1-2 work between Eli Adams, Wilmering, and Taylor, doing some give and goes and nice little triangles between them, and just a beautiful goal for Taylor to put the ball away. But unfortunately, that was as good as it got for him, because he was subbed about 6 minutes later, I think, with that hamstring problem.
Yeah. No, and he's obviously from, was it 6 or 7 weeks ago, we were talking about whether he still wanted to even be here and if
Yeah.
he was actually putting the effort in. And then he, was the consistent sort of player to rely on for goals at the moment. And hopefully it's a fairly minor thing and he may miss the upcoming game this week and then hopefully be back, and just hope it's not one of those confidence things with him, which it can be a little bit from memory, that if he's out for a week or two, he then takes a bit longer to come back, or comes back, but to be at the high level that he's been. But hopefully that's not the case this time and he can get back in there, because from what I understand, he's still off contract at the end of the season.
He
So
is.
he's either going to want to be solidifying that he's got a starting 11 guaranteed spot here, or he's going to be wanting to put himself in the best situation to move elsewhere. So hopefully we can still benefit from that.
Yeah, absolutely. Another effort. I think this was in the 38th minute. A bit of a scramble in the box. The ball ended up getting skied over the crossbar, which was good. And then in the 51st minute, Cosgrove again ended up getting a deep cross from the left, their left hand side, our right, all the way to the other side of the goal, straight onto his head, and that made it 2-1.
Yeah, from memory with that one, Wilmering slipped over or something and basically just gave Cosgrove was there and open to put it in. It seemed relatively easy and it probably was quite straightforward, but yeah, just a lapse which we seem to still very much have that in our game, and it's, I guess, just what we somewhat have to put up with, that we'll either go behind and be chasing, or we'll be 2 or 3 up and cruise to the end. So there's no sort of in between.
Yeah, just having a look at that specific phase of play, he didn't have anyone near him. He just slipped over, and it's sort of something I did mean to talk about earlier on, but we'll talk about it now. surface of the ground didn't look particularly good.
Yeah,
The field
so
looked very chopped up on the telecast. How was it in the ground?
so when I was down on the sideline in the Wanderers game, one thing I noticed is that there is actually no real depth to it. And I know underneath it is basically sand, and I think even actually, I don't want to say concrete, but something else under it with all the irrigation and everything else. Um, but it's, yeah, there's no real, like, it's pretty much the thickness of like a golf green
Yeah.
that's just been let to grow a little bit longer. So when it does rip up, there's not a whole lot of depth to it to actually, have a bit of roots or anything to it. So it does rip up quite easily, and it'll be interesting to see how it does hold up after. Now, I went to a function there on Sunday, so I was back there the next morning, and you couldn't even tell that a game had been played on it, and obviously it was ripping up quite easily during the game. Um, but it'll be interesting to see when you've got, 60 odd grown ass men running and cuddling and whatever else on it in the game that is rugby league.
Yeah.
Um, so, yeah, when you've got 3 or 4 games per round on that, how they go. But it's the joy of, you know, not having our own stadium
Yeah.
or anything like that.
Multi-use,
And
multi-use venues.
yeah, next year's only going to be worse for that. It's great for all these um, concerts that have been announced in the last couple of weeks.
Oh
But
yeah, that was
that's,
another thing we'll talk about. But yeah, look, we
yeah,
obviously we had the and we've talked about it before. We had I mean, they ripped up the entire playing surface all the way back to the base layer for the Asia
yeah,
Cup,
yeah,
and laid the proper drainage and laid the like. There's about 4 different levels of different varieties of dirt to allow the water to drain away. But what they did firstly was laid down a hybrid turf. It's a mixture of natural and artificial turf.
yeah,
That was a much hardier product. But I think since then, they started replacing it with patches of natural turf, which is why we've seen, I think, the ground slowly degrade in quality over the years, because obviously natural turf doesn't have the strength that the hybrid
yeah.
product does, but it's a quarter of the price, I'm pretty sure. So I think they've made a decision that it's basically a better option in the long run and basically cheaper to resurface since the Asia Cup rebuild on the turf till now, like that stadium, that surface is, most of it's been replaced multiple times now, so it's now all a natural product rather than a hybrid product. So it's now
Yeah.
breaking up and doesn't have that strength to be able to stand up, and that's why we're seeing it a lot more now than we used to, is basically due to the fact that there's not as much strength in that due to them using a cheaper product of turf.
Which the interesting thing about that is that like, the tendency of the stadium is pretty much 99% grass based sport.
Yeah,
Like, your investment and look, I'm sure there's an element of, going to the Jets, going to the Knights and saying, I'm sorry, you don't like the product, go somewhere else. Um, but obviously, there is nowhere else.
yeah. But then
So,
again, they're going to get even less money for
yeah,
for the venue. But yeah, I don't know. It'd be interesting to. I don't know who the. I don't. I used to have contact with people in the stadium back when I was involved in active support. They've all moved on now, and it's different people. But it'd be interesting to maybe speak to the grounds staff who
yeah,
take care of the surface and just have a chat to them and just see whether that's a decision that they've made or something that's been imposed on them due to budgetary constraints, or whether that product's not
yeah,
available anymore. But I'm pretty sure it is, because I'm pretty sure I know the company that supplied the turf initially, because hit them up a couple of times on Twitter back when that was a thing before it descended into the Elon mess that it's become. But I'm pretty sure I actually tweeted them directly saying, "Are you guys still providing the surface to McDonald Jones Stadium?" And they said, "We no longer supply our product to the stadium to returf when it's required." So yeah, I'm pretty sure they're probably using a local product, but it's going to be a local cheaper product.
Yeah,
That's why we don't see the structural integrity that we used to.
yeah. It's the Sir Walter or whatever from out at Lawn.
Yeah,
Um,
possibly.
but yeah, it's like, look, as I said, going there Sunday morning, you couldn't really tell that something had been played on it the night before. But at the same time, you get down to the level of the actual grass and you can see it is patchy. You can see that around sort of the outskirts of the pitch is even worse. And you can also see it's not as noticeable as it used to be in previous years, where I remember you'd sit in the grandstand, you could see the visible hump in the middle.
Yep.
But yeah, it's still definitely like it's obviously got a camber to it. It's not completely flat because drainage.
Yep.
But yeah, there's definitely work to do. But again, it's the downfall of multi-purpose stadiums, and hey, it's still actually better than Allianz Stadium that they'd spent all this money on and then had to go back and do again.
Yeah.
So I hope it doesn't get to the point where we do have to wait for an Asian Cup type big event every couple of years where they relay it and you maybe get a season where it's half decent. Um, because, apart from I think there's some games for the Rugby World Cup coming up, and then after that, there's no sort of big sporting events that are planned there, from what I understand. So, yeah, it's definitely something. But hey, at least they're watering it 5 minutes into half time now so that it's then dry by the time they actually start playing again, which I'm sure, it'd be interesting to see if the club's happy with, because I feel like they used to very much water it the 30 seconds before everyone come back on the field when they'd actually cleared everything off. But now they seem to give it a quick water before people come out for the halftime, whatever it is.
Yeah. So yeah. So they've changed
So,
it around.
so you can't say they're not watering it at halftime, but they're watering it, and then the mini ruse kids are coming out and playing on it. They're doing the, paper plane competition and whatever else. And by the time the players come back out, it's pretty well dry again.
Right. Well, I think we've avoided discussing the goal for long enough. So, look, yeah. So good header from Cosgrove, but yeah, unfortunate. Getting back to the reason why Wollongong fell over, but yeah, unfortunate. He was not able to get up there and stop that goal, but it is what it is. And then, literally a minute and a half later, they very nearly scored again. Jesse Randall, that player again. His shot ricocheted off the crossbar, and then that fell to another Auckland player who snapped another shot into the side netting. So we were very lucky not to be 3-1 down by that point.
Yeah, no, we definitely were lucky to not concede in that little passage of play. And then from there, it was pretty well end to end for a while there until I think about the last maybe 10 minutes or whatever time it was that uh, Cotta Misanuma come on. That was when we sort of had the play down our end. And once again, it was one of those games where you sat there and go, if we had an extra 5 minutes, we probably would have scored, but it wasn't to be.
Yeah, I feel it was about the last sort of 15 to 20 minutes we had most of the momentum. We were pushing really hard, and there was a lot of last ditch tackles, and their defense really stood up and blocked just about everything. It was when Lockie Rose went off, he sat with his head in his hands. I think the camera cut to him a couple of times because he had a shot that flashed across the face of goal. I think it was maybe 5 minutes before he got subbed, which he was so close to getting a tap in, but just got taken off his toes by one of the defenders. They got to it first and was able to deflect it away. But that just seemed to be the story for most of the end of the second half. We were just pushing and pushing and pushing, trying to do what we could. But yeah,
Yeah.
it was either the final pass just wasn't quite right. A lot of passes going astray or not quite going where they wanted to, or the pass that was going where it was supposed to was just getting stopped or deflected or kicked away by the Auckland defence.
Yeah, and I think too for, one thing with Millsy is he not only uses the same squad fairly consistently, but he also seems to bring the same subs on for the same people at roughly the same time every game.
Yeah,
So because of that, I think if you're a Lockie Rose or a, Will Dobson or something like that, you know that pretty much if you haven't had an impact by 70 minutes, you're probably coming off very soon. And yeah, I was shocked that Mizunuma come on as early as he did, but I think it also gave him a good chance to create a lot of opportunities. And I think in the end, our guys were just getting desperate to get it in any way, and we're all sort of sitting there yelling out "shoot" to all these players, and they weren't really doing it.
yeah, that old football refrain. Yeah, it was a slightly confusing substitution, that one. I thought maybe especially when you were pulling Lockie Rose off to bring Cotter on, I thought maybe it might have been a better idea to take Lockie and someone else off that you were going to take off a bit later. Like it might have been a better idea to bring Cotter and Gibson on at the same time, and maybe look
Yeah,
at taking off Lockie and a choice of whoever else they took off in the second half. Maybe taking Dobson off might have been a better option, or Adams. Either one of those could have come off a little bit earlier and sort of played inside with Cotter outside, and you would have had
yeah,
Ben Gibson having a little bit more time to be able to get into the game and possibly be able to start scoring again. But did you find that a little bit not not confusing, but was that maybe look, I'm not second guessing Mills in any way, shape, or form, but yeah, that maybe it might have. And look, we'd already had to make the early substitution in the first half with bringing Bertoncello on for Taylor at the 35th minute. So I sort of understood why he was trying to maybe try and keep things a little bit more stable until later on in the second half, where he did the triple sub in the final sub window. But do you think maybe we could have looked to change that around a little bit, bring two on and then bring another two on later, rather than the one and the three?
yeah, I think so. And I go back to what I said earlier that, I think with Lockie and Eli and even, you know, Dobson to an extent, if they haven't scored by a certain point, they're probably not going to score. And therefore, it's, do you bring a player like Gibson on with enough time to actually have an impact? Obviously, with Cotter, it can go one of two ways where, he is obviously a more mature player. So is he going, like, his job is to sort of create the chances more so than finish them? Um, so, do you bring him on when he's got enough energy to run it out, or do you give him more time to do things? Um, Cicluna coming on was interesting. I didn't really feel like that was a position we needed to bring someone on, but he did okay when he did come on. So, yeah, you just never really know, but that's football, I guess.
Yeah, it was. Well, I mean, the two unused subs was a keeper and Grozos. So like you're either gonna, maybe look at bringing it was either going to be Cicluna or Grozos that was going to come on. So I
Yeah,
don't know whether Grozos would have given us anything different. I sort of saw why he was looking to bring a younger player on that could push further up. Grozos was never going to
yeah,
sort of be that. But then again, maybe he could have brought Grozos on and pushed Burgess further forward, but by that time Burgess had been busting his gut in the midfield for most of the game. Was he really going to be able to then push further forward and be able to be effective in the final 10
Yeah.
minutes? It's a bit of a balancing act. But not going to go through the rest of the highlights because it was all pretty much the same, trying and not quite coming off. But to quickly finish this off, the stats, 70% possession was the stat I was alluding to before, to the Jets, and 30% to Auckland. That was the same stat in both halves. But a lot of the attacking stats, a lot of them were in favour of Auckland. The XG was 2.53 to Auckland as opposed to 0.37 to us. They had 18 shots on target. They had 18 shots total. We had 8. They had 5 shots on target. We only had 1. We had more touches in the opposition box, 32 to 24. They had 5 big chances to our 0. Our pass accuracy was pretty good. We had 78% as opposed to their 59%. We committed more fouls. They had more offsides. We had more corners than they did, but that didn't really seem to be that much of a difference. 5 block shots to 4 to us. The XG was all in their favour. All the passing stats were in our favour, but all the defence stats were in theirs. But they ended up, like I said, on the top stats, sort of a lot of including the scoreboard, where the stats where it mattered, they were the ones that ended up on top. It was we had a lot of. They had a lot of more effective possession and the attacking stats, whereas we and the defending, we had a lot of passes and some shots, but not a lot of accuracy. And they were able to keep us out. So that's the way it ended.
Yeah. No, and look, at the end of the day, it was a good game where things just didn't come together for us. I don't think there was any lack of effort. And as I said, if there was probably 3 to 5 minutes more, which I know we played 5 minutes of injury time or whatever, like we probably would have come away with something there, I feel.
Looking at the player ratings of FOTMob, all these stats and everything were on FOTMob as well. A lot of, or not all of our players except for Wilmering were in the yellow, or orange. So basically from 5.8 all the way up to 6.9, depending on who you were looking at. Taylor was the highest rated. Oh, actually, no. Adams and Taylor both rated a 6.9, but highest player rating was Wilmering with a 7.2. He was the only one in the green. The highest player rating on the field was Cosgrove with a 9.0. All of the Auckland players were in green, so they were all rated 7.0 or higher, with the exception of Gallagher, who was 6.7. But yeah, all the other players were. I was actually really surprised. Their goalkeeper was only rated a 6, and I thought he actually performed really well. But yeah, that's a bit weird. Did you have a player of the match?
I would say player of the match for me would have to be Delianov again. A lot of just luck with balls hitting the post and whatnot, but also, a couple of touches there that if he doesn't make that save, it goes very differently.
I would probably put it either on Wilmering or Adams myself. But yeah, I do see why you give it to Delhi. He's performed really well, and there was really nothing he could do about the 2 goals that he conceded. So yeah. Anyway, right. Well, we've gone for nearly 55 minutes. So we're sort of doing a regular hour and a half episode that me and Matt usually do. We'll try and wrap it up fairly quick in the next 5 to 10 minutes. But a couple of bits of news that have come out. Obviously, you talked about the news that's come out with Lockie Rose definitely being confirmed as leaving at the end of the season, going to Dundee. Now, is he going to Dundee United or going to Dundee? I think it was Dundee United.
I'm pretty sure it's Dundee United, yeah.
Yeah. So that's at the end of the season. And look, he's tried to go overseas a couple of times. It's never really worked. Never really been able to get the move. But he's performed really well this season. Him and Taylor are both on 8 goals. One below Cosgrove, who's now one ahead on 9. he's getting close to, I think he's 28 now, so it's sort of prime time for him to be looking to test himself overseas. So really good opportunity for him. I'm just hoping that, unlike another striker that we lost recently, he doesn't end up back in the A-League in 6 months at another club.
Yeah, I would hope that, he doesn't do that. But look, I think he's the kind of player that probably goes to Scotland and does okay there. But I also think it's going to sound really harsh, but that would probably be where his peak is. He has a couple of years there and then maybe looks to come back or something like that. But yeah, wish him well. Obviously, it's on the back of a good season here, and also too, he was a good signing and he has been really good for the club. But he's just and 8 goals in the season, but he was never really someone that you look at and you go, he's going to score every game without fail. So yeah, consistent in effort, but not necessarily always the end product, I guess.
Yeah, so not necessarily a prolific striker like Tags was, or Becker. Or
Yeah,
not
or
necessarily Becker. He's probably more Becker than Roy O'Donovan, because Roy was a prolific. Roy and Tags were both prolific, whereas sort of Becker
yeah,
and Lockie are a little not like you can't like you said, you can't poo-poo their effort. They always tried, but yeah, they're not always the goal return that you'd hope.
yeah. He's no, Pete Jamie McLaren or something
Yeah,
like
yeah,
that.
yeah,
Like,
absolutely. And look, he's not going to be the only player. Obviously, rumours are swirling around a number of other players, including, surprisingly, and this is not new news, it's old news that cropped up during the transfer window, but there are apparently clubs looking at Battleado, even though he's got an ACL injury. There are clubs looking at Eli, even though he's still got another year, I think, to go on his contract. But Taylor and Bayliss are both out of contract at the end of this season, and I'd say they're also pretty much going to be a lock to be signing for other clubs. You just hope that they'd be clubs overseas and not other A-League clubs.
Yeah, well, I guess the hard thing is if they're not contracted, there's, sweet FA you can actually do about where they
Absolutely.
go.
Yep.
And that's, poor, or I don't want to criticise the club too much, but it's poor long term planning of, I think, you know, it's funny when we refer to Danny McBreen as much as being someone that, speaks sense for the Jets, but he said a couple of months ago that, when things started going well, why aren't you locking these players into 2 or 3 year contracts that, yeah, sure, you might pay a little bit more than what you are now by giving them an upgrade to their contract, but at least you're, you know, locking in for an extra couple of like, and let's talk it for an A-League contract, you're probably talking an extra couple of $100 a week for the ability to go, well, sorry, you've got a contract. If someone wants to get you to their club, be that another club in the A-League or overseas, it's $1 million transfer fee. And all of a sudden, the extra $200 a week that you're going to pay them over 3 years is, a worthy investment.
I think
Um,
I think was I mean, it's a bit of a weird situation, mainly due to the fact of the last couple of seasons. Those players that we're talking over were signed for Rob Stanton. Rob
yeah,
Stanton had the same person who shall not be named as his agent, and that person has also been very vocal about those players. There was talk in the off-season that Taylor didn't want to be here this season. We've been able to turn that around, and he's performed really well. He stuck it out, and it looks like he's going to get his move at the end of this. He's going to see his contract out and then
yeah,
move on. But I don't know if I talked about it or alluded to it last week with Matt, but you might have actually seen I think about a week and a half ago, there was a rebuttal article in the Herald after he who shall not be named basically said these contract offers coming from the Jets are derisory. So these other A-League clubs are offering double what the Jets are offering, and then the Jets are saying, well, we are trying to divest the player agent power being centered around one or two
one
players,
person.
one person at this club, which has been the case for far too long. And look, I think that's more of what we're seeing here rather than anything else. We've just decided, look, we've got systems in place where we've re-signed a couple of really good young players. Bertolicio and Bertoncello signed on last week before the Auckland game, which we talked about. And we think we're going to be able to find other players that are going to be able to replace these players that we're losing. And I think even in the media today, social media, I think someone's posted up that we're rumoured to be signing a player from Auckland for next season. No one knows who it is. But, and if you add that onto the interest that was supposedly we have with Rufa from Wellington, where we're looking at we are attracting players now. We're not just signing who we can because that's all that's available. Where it looks like we're actually going out of our way to diversify where we're signing our players from, and we're signing players with a plan. We're not just signing players because that's all that's left. We've got a strategy in place, and with Boogs being in the director of football operations role, I can trust that him, Millsy, and Tane are all going to be working together to make sure that they're signing the best options for the club, rather than people who are only available because no one else wants them. Even though we've done well with that in the past.
Yeah, I think one thing that you cannot discount, in my opinion, is that there are players that are going to want to come and play at the club for the simple fact that there is some form of international Asian football next season.
Yep.
We're going to be backing up to, defend the Australia Cup, which neither here nor there on whether it's actually a big trophy. It's a trophy nonetheless.
Yeah.
It's also then, things keep going well and we're playing finals, grand final, possibly winning the league, And then but then also too, the biggest thing is I don't think you can actually discount how many players would want to come and work with the coaching setup that we've got. Like, you think we've got Millsy as head coach, just Fedstrappen or whatever his name is there as, arguably one of the better goalkeeper coaches that also seems to be playing more of an assistant coach. You've got Zadkovic that people like across the league that, is there as well, and other fringe people. And also too, like, I don't discount for a second that if Millsy had to, he could put a kit on and put a 90-minute display on himself.
Absolutely.
So, and like if I was a player, knowing that my coach could do everything that I can do, probably even better, like, why wouldn't you come here? And also too, like, that's before even ignoring the whole, you come to Newcastle, you're like, we're talking, Pete and I were talking about at the game that, you come and sign a contract in Newcastle, they train out at Maitland, they play in Broadmeadow. You don't have to even necessarily like live in the Newcastle LGA anymore. You could take your money a bit further and go out to like a Thornton or something like that. There's good schools, there's like opportunities for you, and your money goes a lot further than it would in a Sydney or a Melbourne or anything like that. So I think we're in a place to attract really good players that do want to either be in that squad that gives them the opportunity to be seen in other, jurisdictions, or even just to be comfortable. Like, you look at, was it Zach Clough come here, and he's, apart from excelling at being at the merchandise tent out the front before kickoff,
Yep.
he hasn't even gotten near the squad.
Yeah, well, I don't know if he's even fit yet. I think he's still on the Ben Kanorowski rehabilitation bicycle, but and that's before you even look at the academy prospects that are coming through that are going to be forcing their way or looking to force their way into the starting lineup in the next season or two. Like, Dobson and Cooper, who have all congratulations to them. They've been selected for the Young Socceroos. I think they'll be missing for. Do they actually end up missing for any games? Because I think their games over in
We
China are actually during a window.
I think they're in a window, but they may miss a game. I think we determined they may miss one.
Yep.
But and even Badalado, like, yeah, sure, if
Yeah.
he gets an offer from a Bayern Munich or whatever else, he's probably going regardless of what anyone can say. But at the same time, too, fairly major injury, he's probably also going to want to just be somewhere where he's comfortable.
Yeah, absolutely. And you've got Nunez, who's in and around the first team squad if he's not getting picked, but he's still learning. They're taking it very slow with him. You've seen
Yeah,
Cicluna get a couple of appearances, and there's a bunch of other. There's Richard Nkomo. There's a bunch of younger players that have been signed that are around the fringes that they're going to be able to be developed between now and next season to hopefully be able to naturally progress into vacancies being left by these players that are possibly going to depart at the end of the season. So we're doing pretty well.
well, and next season, one thing to obviously acknowledge is that with we're going to be expected to go pretty deep into the Australia Cup again. We're going to be expected to go, as deep as we can in the Asian side of things, as well as also compete in the league. Like, we're actually going to need a solid starting 30.
Yep.
Like, because we are going to be playing fairly regularly with tight turnarounds and
Yeah,
all that sort of stuff. And
we're going to need a big squad. And also, not just that, but the next couple of, basically the run into the finals is going to be pivotal. We want to try and, the lads here are going to be able to set us up for success in the future, because if we can finish first or second, we qualify for ACL Elite. So
yeah,
Auckland don't get the spot. If we finish second, we get it. So that's going to be a big incentive to basically battle it out with Auckland over the next couple of weeks to try and finish as high as possible.
and if you get ACL Elite, isn't that when you start going up like the Al Nassers of the world?
Yep, absolutely. Basically, they're one
Bit minor
player's
carrot.
got the whole budget of the league.
Hey, look, if I was a Badalado and I had to stay here and I potentially get drawn against a certain player with a number 7 at Al Nasser, I know what I'd be doing.
Absolutely. Now, something that you talked about before, with regards to a bunch of events coming up in our season, there is going to be. They've just announced a third concert, which is Robbie Williams. So, looking
Yep.
during our season usually starts in October, beginning of October, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So we've got there's the last game scheduled for McDonald Jones Stadium in the NRL is 2 NRLW games in mid-September. Looks like the last NRL game, that obviously doesn't include finals, but the last regular season game of the Knights is August 22nd. The last NRLW game of the regular season is September 13. Then you've got the Rugby League World Cup, which is October 18. There's 2 games there. Then there's another 2 games penciled in for November 7th. Then you've got 3 concerts. November 12th is Foo Fighters, which I'm going to. November 17th, Robbie Williams. And December 8th, Guns N' Roses.
Yeah. And I am hearing pretty good rumors from friends in the, music industry that there's potentially at least another 1, possibly another 2 that may get announced.
Right. A big concert, another 2 more big concerts possibly happening around the same time frame.
Yeah.
Yeah. So look, and
ones that have happened not all that long ago, as in the last like 2 years, that went for 2 or 3 shows.
Yeah. So look,
So
yeah, again, multi-purpose event, but with all these being close together, are they going to basically, does that block out the stadium for that period of time? Are we going to have to be playing away from home? Are they going to be able to pull the
no,
stage down
so
and then set it back up
I
again?
I did run past with my mate that works in production at the stadium that there are actually not enough stages in Australia of that size for them not to basically bunny hop each other. So if it's a run of the usual, Sydney, Newcastle, Brisbane, Melbourne, or something like that, they actually would have to pack that stage up and ship it to somewhere and then have it there and then bring it back. So,
It doesn't stay the whole
because the
time.
other thing is, if they just left, say they just turned around and said we're going to leave the stage for a month, you'll be returfing everything under it.
Oh, absolutely.
So,
Yeah. It would
um,
absolutely ruin the surface.
yeah. So unless they were, I believe there is technology where they can essentially do the whole, and I don't think McDonald Jones has them, but the like artificial lights that they put on that keep the grass at a certain temperature and whatever.
Yep.
They can put them underneath stages. I know they do that in some of the ones in the UK and stuff like that. But yeah, I'd say it would be for they can build like the riggers that build those stages can do it in 24 hours.
Yep.
Like if they have to. So I think they'll bump it in and out, but that's still going to be, you've got foot traffic of standing on it, and they're all, Robbie Williams is probably the only one where they go with the whole seated thing. Everything else is going to be, general admission standing. So then you're putting those big mats down that still end up killing the grass anyway. So yeah, I think for our side of things, and the big challenge that we're going to have is that the Asian side of things is the only thing that you can really guarantee at the moment, because we've obviously qualified, if I'm not mistaken, through the Australia Cup. But
Yeah, so we've qualified for ACL 2. It's just
yeah,
a question of whether we qualify for ACL Elite, and we won't know that until the regular season's finished.
so if we do qualify, do we do both?
No,
Or do we
no,
only do the
I'm
elite?
pretty sure the spot. There's a pretty yeah. I'm pretty sure what'll happen is we qualify for the highest level of competition, so we'll go into ACL Elite, and then
Yeah.
that's going to be. I'm pretty sure it's going to be interesting, because what's going to have to happen is through for the Australia Cup people, it'll be either Heidelberg or Avondale, but neither of them, I think, are going to be able to play in that competition, basically due to the fact that their facilities aren't up to scratch.
Yeah.
But I think there's also other eligibility criteria. And if the NPL teams can't qualify, it then goes down further to quarterfinalists, in which case it would be MacArthur again or Sydney FC. But I don't know how they would differentiate between the two,
Yeah.
because
Right. And
they
then
finish at the same level.
that us that then obviously asks the question too of, if we can't, and maybe it's worth having a chat to one of the club executives or whatever else. But there's also then, if that wipes out a huge volume of the, like obviously Australia Cup, you go anywhere, you go to Edgeworth if you really need to. But I imagine for the, as you just said, with the Asian side of things, certain product and certain standard expected,
Yeah,
especially if you do get into
yeah.
ACL Elite.
Oh, you won't be able to
You know,
bump. You can't bump it to Magic. Like, it's got to be
yeah,
played. It's got to be played at McDonald Jones Stadium.
yeah. And then the alternative, if we can't use that, is the really shit thing of we're probably going to a Polytech or something like that.
Oh God, I hope not. Oh, that's
Um,
that's pie in the sky stuff, which will come further on down the line. We don't even know what the. Well, I mean, the advantage is going to be all of the ACL Elite games are midweek. The problem
yeah,
is going to be whether there's going to be any clashes with the events that have
yeah.
already been scheduled, but we won't know that
The
till
the
down the line.
the midweek will be that, obviously, Saturday concert they're bumping in from probably Tuesday, Wednesday.
Yeah.
And then there'll probably be a Nitro Circus or a Supercross or something like that that gets thrown in there as well, because, we just have to do that every year as well.
Well, I'm gonna hope that doesn't happen. But anyway, right, this could go on for hours, but we're already at an hour and 15, so we'll try and wrap this up as quick as possible. This weekend sees the Jets travelling to Sydney to play Sydney FC, obviously at Allianz. 22nd.
It's a funny reason to go to Sydney.
It is a funny reason. Now, kickoff is it
3 p.m.
3 p.m. Really weird kickoff time. So having a look at the thread on Newcastle Football Net forums, which everyone can jump on and have a look. Site's looking a lot more stable now. I'm hoping to be able to. I keep saying it. I'm hoping to be able to upgrade the forums at some point, but other things keep getting in the way. So. Things have been a little bit more stable. But yeah, if you're having problems, please send me an email, info@newcastlefootball.net if you're having any access issues. But there has been a whole bunch of problems with emails coming from the site, not making it to people with Gmail accounts. So again, I don't know if that's been fixed. They've done a server migration. Our website is now hosted cloud-based rather than physical server-based. So that seems to have bumped up our reliability and our speed of loading and all that sort of thing seems to be a lot better. But jump on the Newcastle Football Net forums and have a look at things and jump in the pre-match thread that Dave puts up on a regular basis for every game. So looking at the stats he's put up, overall there's been 62 fixtures between the teams. 59 of those occasions have been in the A-League. 3 of those have been in the pre-season cup. In Newcastle, we've won. There's been 30 matches in both Newcastle and Sydney. Looking at the away fixture, we've only won 5 of those. Sydney have won 19, and there's been 6 draws. Goals in the fixture in Sydney, 32 to the Jets, 56 to Sydney FC. The last time we played them was match day 9. That lineup for Sydney was Harrison, Devonish, Mears, Ryan, Grant, Tisserand, Grant, Garuccio, Holman, Yuli, Walati, Toure, Campuzano, and Piero. Again, no Lolly. Hopefully we're not going to see him this week either. Our starting lineup, obviously we've known what it's been for the last couple of months, mate, but we're obviously going to be seeing a different lineup with we're going to go with the assumption that Taylor's not going to be there. I think he'll be rested. Is it going to be the opportunity to maybe make 1 or 2 other changes, or do you think he's just going to stick with the one?
I think he'll just stick with the one. The only other change I could see is that, they do start Gibson and bring Lockie Rose on towards the end, but at the same time, I don't think Sydney FC is the kind of team that you want to rely on them being gassed at sort of 60, 70 minutes and someone like a Lockie coming on just causing havoc. So, I think largely probably stay the same with just interesting to see who does come on for Clayton Taylor, whether
I
it's
think it'll be
Burton
I think
Cello
it'll be Burton Cello.
Yeah, so
that would be my guess.
But I can't really see who else would come on there. So,
I mean, we did mention last week about maybe Dobson's played a lot of football, and a lot of 90-minute football hasn't really been subbed a great deal. He's sort of run out. Like, is it maybe time to pull him out of the firing line and give him a bit of a break, or do you just keep playing him?
Well, the other thing that'd be interesting to see too is whether the Ollie Roos coaches have got anything there from a performance standpoint, whether they're like, look, we are going to plan to use him, so we don't want him to be coming into camp gassed and whatever. But I guess we'll see what happens. I would have liked to have gone to this game and may still, but haven't been down to Allianz since they've rebuilt it. It'd be interesting to go.
Neither have I. I was planning to go until I worked out I was on night shifts all this weekend, so I'm not going to make it either, which is unfortunate.
Probably
I'm
not going
just
to go for that then.
looking at a post on the forums from Forever Red saying that Friday night NRL, Saturday night Super Rugby. Pitch could be a little bumpy.
Yeah.
So yeah, two egg ball games in 2 days before we play them on the Sunday. So yeah, that's
And as we said, that Allianz pitch hasn't been the greatest since it was redone anyway.
so. Is that going to
So
be our advantage or their advantage?
probably theirs.
Yep.
I don't know. I feel like Sydney FC haven't actually played at home all that much.
They haven't played that well either. I'm just going to have a look at this.
And even if they have at home with, the brackets and whatever else, I'm pretty sure they've played games elsewhere in Sydney, not actually at Allianz, because of various different matches and availability. Like, yes, here we are whinging about a couple of concerts because, the main whinge for us is there's nowhere else to go if we don't go there. But Sydney FC don't seem to play at home all that much.
Having a look at this is first playing third, so they're 33 points. We're on 40 points. They have had 2 wins, 2 draws, and a loss in their last 5. They lost their last game against Melbourne City, 1-0 away. Then they drew in the Big Blue against Victory, 2-2. Their last win was 3 games ago against Wellington Phoenix, which was just a 1-0 away win in Wellington. And they haven't really been free scoring. They had the previous game was a 1-0 win against Brisbane, and the previous game before that was a 1-1 draw against Auckland. So I'm seeing a lot of ones in their scoring columns. So not really prolific. Looking at their last starting lineup against City, so Devonish Mears in the goals, Garuccio, Popovic, Tisserand, and Grant across the back line. Quintal, Ocon, how do we pronounce Quispe? Campuzano?
Sure.
And then Arslan and Stamatolopoulos up front. So we're going to have AP coming up against us in this game. And look, we're not seeing much of Joe Lolly. He seems to be struggling with injury this season, which is great. And not seeing, I didn't see Torre in this last game, so it'll be interesting to see whether he's going to be on the bench or pushing his way back in for a starting lineup.
Yeah. What was the rumor during the week that Ofitale is going to Western Sydney?
Yeah, he's out of contract at the end of the season. And well, I don't know if, I did see that. That's definitely going to be interesting. Can that possibly, if Wanderers are openly approaching him, does that mean he's not going to be at Sydney FC at the end of after this season, and that means that the team sort of maybe have a bit of a drop off in intensity because he's not going to be there? So why try?
Yeah, I mean, surely you still want to try and get as high up the table in the regular season as you can, but I think also too, it's probably, like they're going to be playing finals from what I understand. I believe it's just a case of if we win, and I think if Auckland win, it starts to get into the realms of mathematically that's the top 2. It's just which one finishes where. So,
well, look, there's so 40 points for us, 39 for Auckland, 33 for Sydney, Melbourne Victory 32, Adelaide 32, Central Coast 27. So look, it's a 3-way battle between Sydney FC, Melbourne Victory, and Adelaide United for those 3, 4, 5 spots. If we can win against Sydney this week, and who cares what Auckland do, I think it's going to go a long way to solidifying at least us being either first or second for the finishing first or second at the end of the season, and purely for confidence, I think, as well. Trying to turn around a little bit of a loss in momentum in the last couple of weeks, especially with a loss last week. It's very important, I reckon. So I
Yeah.
would be crossing my fingers and toes and everything else for a win in this game, and I think we can do it.
Yeah, I think so too.
You're gonna now. How are you gonna play this? Are you gonna be like Matt and not want to jinx it, or you don't really you don't really care?
No,
You're not really that way inclined.
I don't care. I don't have, I'm not that important where things actually depend on what I think of it. Ask my, recent future or recent past rather. Um, so I am going to say that we are going to have a 3-1 victory.
I reckon it's going to be. I think it's going to be a 2-1 victory, but yeah, I think it's going to be a little bit closer than that, which is probably not going to do any good for everybody's stress levels. But I think
No,
we'll come out on
it's
top.
going to be it's going to be a 3-1. It'll be 2-1 and then we'll score in like the last like extra time, injury time, whatever we're calling it these days.
Righto. We'll just quickly get our tips in for the rest of the round. So starts off on Friday. Western Sydney hosting Adelaide United at CommBank Stadium. I'm picking a draw.
I'm picking Adelaide winning 4-0.
Second game is an early game from Auckland. Auckland facing Macarthur. I'm picking a draw in this one as well. Probably more hope than anything else.
Yeah, I think Auckland will get a 2-1 win.
Second game, 3 p.m. Brisbane Roar versus Wellington Phoenix. I'm picking Brisbane in this one.
I'm going to go Brisbane 2 with a 2-1.
I don't really want to do it, Wellington fans, but unfortunately, things have been a little bit up and down for you guys this season. I think it's just going to be, everything's winding down with respects to that. The late game, 5 p.m. kickoff on Saturday is Amy Park, Melbourne Victory hosting Central Coast. I hate doing it, but I'm gonna pick the Victory only because they're playing Central Coast and I don't want to pick them.
Yeah, I think Victory will get a 1-0 win and one matter will score some great free kick.
As he has been all season. And then the last game after hours on 7 p.m. on Sunday is Perth Glory hosting Melbourne City. I think Melbourne City will probably win this.
I think they will too, and seem to be very loud about Rob Stanton going to Perth, and then it got very quiet again.
Yeah.
So not sure if anything you said there. I was listening to mention him. I swear I'm not on any form of payment or anything, but listening to Danny McBreen's podcast that he does where he just swears for the hour and a half or whatever. It was talking a couple of weeks ago about how the way that Adam Griffiths is with his press conferences, where it was like funny at the beginning, but then now it's like it just seems like you don't even actually care. Whether that is going to impact him, but then also too, I wonder if he would be in line for Wellington and if he would prefer to go back there or what they're going to do. So
Yeah, he's had some history there, obviously. So yeah, that'll be
yeah.
It's all this sort of talk about who goes where is going to be ramping up over the next couple of weeks. So keep your eyes out on social media because if there's a rumor around, people are going to post it for traffic. So hopefully we see very little social media traffic on anything Newcastle Jets related, apart from winning. That's all we want to see between now and the end of the season. But fingers crossed that's going to be how that goes. Righto, I think we've waffled on for long enough, mate. You've done really well. You and me have managed to equal or get pretty close to a myself and Matt's episode length. So thank you very much for coming on and chatting crap for an hour and a half.
No worries at all. It's always interesting when you haven't done it for a little bit and then you go, oh, surely we can't talk that long, and then here we are.
Yeah, it's always the way it works, mate. I always try and keep it to an hour, and it never works out. We get sidetracked and talk about something else interesting, and then steer it back in. Well, I'm gonna have to try and be a little more concise, I think, in the next season. But as far as this season goes, you're getting content.
Well, clearly we're horticulturists and whatever else, and know the ins and outs of turf growth and all that sort of stuff.
We did talk We did talk about grass for quite a long time.
Maybe they could go with what they have at, was it Allegiant Stadium, the one in Vegas they built, where and I think it does it at Tottenham as well, where the pitch is actually on like a runner, and they take it out and water it in the sun, and then they bring it in and it in the enclosed stadium. Maybe they could just like run it out onto the trotting track or something like that,
Yeah.
and water it all and get it all going there, and then bring it back in when the concert's over.
No, we can live in hope, but I think you're that costs money. We don't have it. And
Hey, it's an election year. We can dream, or it's
yeah.
not. Next year is, so we don't get things out of that.
No, absolutely not. Righto, mate. Thanks very much for joining me. Appreciate you jumping on.
Not a problem at all, and go the Jets.
Thanks very much for listening, guys. Get on to newcastlefootball.net/podcast for all the subscription links and previous episodes, TV for all of the non-long, not updated video content, /chants if you're looking for some of the older chants. I'm going to be liaising with the squadron in the next couple of weeks to try and get some of the newer chants posted on there as well. I'm slowly trying to get the website reorganised, so bear with me. Videos and stuff of a lot of the older chants from back in the day still there, and like I said, I'll be looking to update that hopefully in the next couple of weeks, along the same amount of time as I'm going to be upgrading the forums. That's newcastlefootball.net/forums. If you want to get in contact with us on social media, we are on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Threads, Blue Sky, and YouTube /Jetstream. We're on all of those. If you want to send us an email, podcast@newcastlefootball.net. Until next time, vamos el Jerkos.
Go the Jets.